there, Morbid Maniacs. It's time for another spooky video, part of Vlogtober. And for tonight's spooky video, I am going to be talking about the legend of the Lady in Black, Melanie Lanier. Located in Boston, Massachusetts, and at the entrance of the Boston Harbor, sits the nearly 2 centuries old Fort Warren. It sits on top of George's Island. The stone and granite structure was built between 1833 and 1860 and was built as a way of coastal defense. It once served as a training facility for Union soldiers and also functioned as a prison for Confederate officers and government officials during the Civil War. The structure is named after Joseph Warren, a patriot that enlisted Paul Revere and sent him on his ride to warn of the British during the Revolutionary War. Warren would die in Battle of Bunker Hill. Fort Warren's strong walls and heavy armor made it a secure place to house these prisoners. However, its weapons were never used other than for training exercises. Fort Warren also played a huge part in both World Wars. It was a command center of the harbor defenses of Boston during World War I. Throughout World War II, it was again a key strategy in defense of the Boston Harbor. After 1950, Fort Warren was considered permanently inactive and officially decommissioned. The grounds were owned by the U.S. government until 1958, when they turned it over to the state of Massachusetts as recreational grounds. So one of the most famous legends surrounding Fort Warren surrounds a lady by the name of Melanie Lanier. And yes, that was the whole reason why I decided to make a video on this topic, was because when I was doing research for Vlogtober, I came across a Lady in Black story, and come to find out her name was also Melanie, so I thought that that was perfect and definitely something Vlogtober worthy. She is also known as the Lady in Black. Melanie's husband, Samuel Lanier, was a Confederate soldier who was being imprisoned at Fort Warren. Sam had been captured during a battle in North Carolina and was sent to the prison for holding. Melanie soon learned of her husband's fate and made it her life's mission to set him free. Some believe the young man had found a way of sending his wife a letter, and this was how she found out about him being imprisoned. However, the letter was never recovered. One evening, Mrs. Lanier set her plan into motion, and she boarded a small boat which was headed towards George's Island to set her husband free. It was rumored that she had found an ally to house her during the days prior, and she had used this time to somehow communicate with him through the walls. Melanie had given herself a new short haircut, and she somehow managed to sew together a uniform, much like the soldiers would wear. This is so weird saying my name and I'm talking about somebody else. I'm not used to that. She used this disguise to make her way into Fort Warren. Mrs. Lanier boarded onto a small boat with her pistol, some rope, some other tools which she was going to use to help set her husband free, and she also carried with her a pickaxe as she planned to dig her husband out of there. Quietly, she sat floating in the darkness, not realizing that this was going to be her last night alive. Melanie sat patiently waiting in the darkness at their meeting spot. Her husband waited for the perfect opportunity to signal her. Suddenly, she heard her beloved whistling a popular southern tune. Melanie knew that this was her husband, and she leaped into action. She approached the prison stealthily And the plan was to use the rope to hoist her small body over the walls. The plan was a success so far, and she was overjoyed to see her husband once again. The two reunited and quickly went to work, as them and a few other prisoners had a tough and tedious task of digging themselves out beneath the prison. They had planned to create a tunnel and somehow get themselves into the armory, weaponize themselves, and overthrow the guards and escape. However, this plan failed, as the digging was loud enough to catch the attention of one of the Union guards, who had quickly alerted the others. Melanie found herself in a standoff with the Union soldier, and she was grasping onto her pistol for dear life, trying to protect her and her husband. Finally, out of patience, the Union soldier had lunged forward, knocking the pistol out of Melanie's hands. The gun fired wildly, and when Melanie looked up, she seen that it had struck her husband. Tragically, he had passed away right in front of her eyes. She was then arrested for trying to aid her husband into escaping. She was sentenced to death by hanging for the crime of treason. Still wearing her masculine disguise, Melanie had just one request before her hanging, and that was that she wanted to be dressed in women's clothing. Being that there were no female prisoners in the fort at the time, they were only able to find a black gown, which they clothed Melanie in her last moments. The body of Melanie Lanier was buried on the grounds, still wearing that black dress. She left the world with guilt, knowing that her actions are what led to her husband's death. Her spirit remained restless at her failed attempt and fateful accident. Countless other bodies were also said to be buried on the grounds of Fort Warren, and there have been many strange occurrences since. The hauntings had began just a few short weeks after Melanie's death. He reported feeling cold hands on his neck, and when he turned around, he seen a woman wearing a black dress. The reports of the lady in black grew more sinister as time went on. She was often spotted standing on the ramparts of the fort, and in some cases was reported smiling down unnervingly at soldiers. The apparition of Melanie was also said to chase after soldiers at the fort, and there was one instance in the early 1900s when a soldier broke his ankle while running away from her. Many had claimed to have seen the lady in black aimlessly walking around the fort, her black gown swaying in the wind. Soldiers have also seen and felt her being stricken with a severely broken heart. Melanie's spirit became more frequent, that she became known as the Lady in Black. Often spotted in a dark, heavy gown swaying in the harbor breeze, before her apparition vanishes into thin air. Melanie has also been reported wandering through the woods at night carrying a lantern. To this day, folks have spotted Melanie roaming about Fort Warren. Visitors will also share stories of mysterious lights within Fort Warren, as well as misty figures in the shadows, and the smell of old perfume wafting through the air. It is said that if one listens, the sound of a harmonica will be heard playing a sad but familiar tune off in the distance. There have been reports of footprints in the snow and the smell of a fired cannon. Most of the other apparitions on the fort are usually wearing uniforms for either side of the battle, voices being carried by the breeze. The stories of these men are left untold. One of the most troubling encounters was when someone was claimed to be choked by the spirit. While many have claimed to have seen the lady in black, others doubt that she existed at all, as there were no historical records within the newspapers that showed of Melanie's escape plan. And it's also been said that after the World War II, that the U.S. government was selling off some of the military possessions, and Fort Warren was actually one of these cells. Some believe that the story was simply made up to keep the building from being demolished, and that an author by the name of Edward Rowe Snow was culprit of making up the story of Lady in Black. Fort Warren is now a part of the National Park Service and is open to the public to explore, and also for tours. So there's the story of the Lady in Black. What do you guys think of this creepy legend, and would you ever visit Fort Warren for yourself? I feel like all of these places where like war or like something historical has taken place, obviously they're gonna be very haunted. Now, even though I've heard that the story of the Lady in Black is, you know, made up, there have been like many reports that people are still seeing her spirit to this day. I don't know. Me personally, I feel like every legend stems from something that's true, but that's just me. But I definitely would love to visit there sometime. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a big old thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you have not already and become a morbid maniac. Be sure to hit that bell notification. That way you get notified every single time I upload a new video. And I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for watching. Don't tell me you're taking a shit. Please don't be loud.